Today we're taking a look at OnlyCrits' new Kickstarter, Guillman's Guide to Speed. They sponsored this video and asked me to check out some of the content that is going to be in their new book, and let you all know what I think about it. If anything you hear today sounds cool, then make sure to check out the Kickstarter in the link below. First, let me give you the skinny on exactly what we're talking about today. Guillman's Guide to Speed is a new 5e supplement with more than 200 pages of magic items, monsters, spells, potions, classes, subclasses, races. Well, I should say, they have ancestries, but they also have racing, so both types of races. Because this book can help you run 5e in a high-octane, arcane punk setting full of airships and skyships. You'll even be able to create your own vessels together through their vehicle creation mechanics. But also, this book solves a problem I've seen a lot of tables struggle with in combat, and it actually does so in a bunch of different ways. But what is that problem, and what are their solutions? Well, before I answer that, let's look at some of the features of this new book. First, let's talk about one of the new subclasses, the Paladin's Oath of Speed. For your Oath spells, at 3rd level you get Ensnaring Strike and Expeditious Retreat. Expeditious Retreat makes perfect sense for a subclass in a book called Guide to Speed, but I also think it's cool that you get Ensnaring Strike. This Paladin is all about racing and going fast, but the designers also gave the Paladin spells that allowed him to lock other opponents in place, so you can outpace your enemies. At 5th level, you get Hold Person, which, once again, one approach to speed is just to slow down your opponents. And you also get Spider Climb. I like that inclusion. It's not the spell I would have thought of, but if this class is about moving away from enemies, or moving toward them, or just being in full control of your positioning and where your enemies are located, Spider Climb is a great spell. At 9th level, you get Haste, which, duh. And you also get Protection from Energy. At 13th level, you get Dimension Door and Freedom of Movement, of course. And at 17th level, you get 2 very cool spells to include, Tree Stride and Telekinesis. Neither of these are spells that would have occurred to me, but they do fit the theme. I dig them. Then we get 2 new Channel Divinity options. The first is Speed Limits, which allows you to increase or decrease the speed of 4 creatures within 20 feet of you, so they're 10 feet slower or faster, save ends. You also get Speed Boost. As a bonus action, you can touch one willing creature and imbue their next attack with kinetically charged power. For 1 minute, whenever the creature moves at least half their speed in a straight line, and then hits with a weapon attack on the same turn, they deal an additional 1d8 force damage. That's so cool. I really like that ability. I know I would just want to use it every single session to charge into my enemies and slam into them with extra damage. At 7th level, the Paladin gets Aerodynamic Aura, where the Paladin and any allies within 10 feet can't have their movement speed reduced by spells or magical effects. This is a nice way to circumvent certain spells like Slow or Hold Person, but it's not too powerful because it's specific to spells and magic. So your characters can still be grappled, you can all still move at half speed in difficult terrain, which means this feature also isn't stepping on the ranger's toes, which is a good thing. At 18th level, this aura's range becomes 30 feet instead of 10. At 15th level, you gain Slowing Strikes. You can actually reduce a target's speed by 10 feet when you hit with a melee attack, which lasts until the end of their next turn. And this effect can stack. So if you get a number of hits, like, say, if you're hasted, then you could potentially neutralize the speed of a creature entirely for 1 round. But even if you can't bring their speed to 0, you've still got a lot of control over where your opponents can go on the battlefield. And finally, the level 20 ability is Track Knowledge. An area 20 feet around you becomes the perfect racetrack for you. Your speed is doubled, you have 1 additional action on each turn, and any enemies in the area are considered to be in difficult terrain, even if they're burrowing or flying. So once per long rest, this just turns you into an unstoppable bubble of speed. It's kind of like being in a hamster ball. I mean, not really, but, a little bit. That is the new Paladin subclass, Oath of Speed, and I really like it. I think I'd give it a try at my table. Unlike a lot of Paladin Oaths I've played, I think I would really enjoy using the Paladin spells to accomplish my goals, rather than simply turning them into smites, because this Paladin has a lot of really cool potential to control the battlefield. Next, let's look at a couple of magic items and spells. The book itself will have more than 40 new spells and more than 50 new magic items, but here are the ones that OnlyCrits was able to share with me in advance. The first magic item is the Ring of Lightning Transport. As an action, while wearing this ring, you can touch any conductive substance, such as metal or heavily salted water, and be transported to any other point on the substance. Any creature touching the substance within 60 feet of your destination takes 1d12 lightning damage. This item is so cool, I honestly might just put this directly into my own games before the Kickstarter even gets fulfilled. And once this magic item is in the hands of my players, I'm way more likely to start adding interesting terrain for the players to interact with, which they can bypass by using the ring, but even if I don't, this is one of those items that the players will find a ton of awesome uses for, I can guarantee that. The next item is the Whip of Swinging. This is a +1 whip. It is a light weapon and deals 1d6 plus dexterity modifier slashing damage on a hit. Other whip stats apply. In addition to the damage it deals, you can use a bonus action to attach the whip to a surface within reach and move 10 feet in that direction. The whip detaches automatically. So this is literally how Indiana Jones gets around. It's also how Spider-Man gets around, and how Batman used to get around before filmmakers just turned his cape into a glider. And I think that's why the artwork kind of splits the difference between a whip, a grappling hook, and one of Spider-Man's web shooters. But also, that's just their artwork. If you wanted to make this a full-on grappling gun, or just make it look like a normal whip, you could do that too. Now let's look at the spells. The first is Overland Travel. It's a first-level transmutation spell, 1 action, range 30 feet. Components are verbal, somatic, and material, requiring you to use the spoke of a wheel, and the duration is 8 hours. You choose up to 6 willing creatures within range. The targets have the ability to travel at a fast pace without suffering any penalties, so long as there are no hostile creatures nearby. They can also ignore difficult terrain while traveling. This is a nice way to make faster travel time doing long travel montages, but it also doesn't negate the use of random encounters, which is a hallmark of overland travel for a lot of GMs and groups. The other spell, and the spell I really want to highlight, is Quick Feet. Again, it's a first level transmutation spell, it's 1 action, the range is touch. Components are verbal, somatic, and material, requiring boot leather, and the duration is 1 minute. When a creature within 10 feet of the target moves, the target can take up to half its movement speed as a reaction. Any opportunity attacks made against the target while Quick Feet is active are made with disadvantage. I really like how this spell actually encourages movement during combat, either to shift to a different target, or chase an enemy who's trying to retreat, or to enable the players to retreat from a combat. And we'll talk about that a bit more later. But first, let's talk about the new monsters. Again, this book will contain more than 40 new monsters, but here are the 3 I got to preview. The first is the Speed Demon. This is a literal fiend, although it's not from the lower planes, it's from the Plane of Speed, which is a creation for this book. Speed Demons are CR 18, they're very powerful. They've got a speed of 60 feet, which does make them half the speed of the Quickling from the Wizards of the Coast books, but also has 29 times as many hit points as the Quickling, so the Speed Demon is no joke. But also, if the Speed Demon has moved at least half its speed on its turn, then at the end of its turn it gains 10 feet of movement. So it literally continues to get faster and faster. If it goes a turn without moving at least half its speed, then its speed resets to 60. This is so cool. I can just imagine this ability unfolding over the course of a battle as the players see the demon getting faster and faster and realizing what a problem this thing is becoming. And it gives them an objective out of the standard combat goals of murder the monster. They need to find a way to stop it or slow it down to prevent it from continuing to build up speed non-stop. The Speed Demon also has Static Dispersal, which causes a burst of lightning when it first moves on its turn. 8d6 lightning damage, DC 18 dex save for half damage. When it comes to its attacks, with every target it attacks, its damage increases by 3. This doesn't include the Static Dispersal, that would be way too powerful. And also, all opportunity attacks made against the Speed Demon are made with disadvantage, though thankfully it's not immune to opportunity attacks. Once again, that would be ridiculously unfair. It has 4 attacks and a bunch of options to choose from. The Electric Lance is a melee hit with a 15-foot range that deals lightning damage. The Speed Slap is a classic melee attack, but it also potentially stuns the target on a DC 16 Constitution save. And Piercing Gaze is a psychic ranged attack. Instead of doing any of these attacks, it can instead use Doubled Burst to double the damage dealt by Static Dispersal. And it has some incredible reactions. Follow the Mark allows it to use half its speed as a reaction to move with a target that moves out of its reach. And remember, thanks to Electric Lance, its reach is 15 feet. The Speed Demon also has Extra Dexterous, where it can re-roll failed dex saves 1 time each. That's extremely useful for trying to avoid effects that might lock it in place, I would imagine. At CR 18, the Speed Demon is the most powerful monster in the packet, but I also like the next 2 a lot. The Animated Lightning Bolt is CR 6, and I like that the description basically says, yeah, somebody creates this thing by trying to animate a moving lightning bolt, which is super dangerous. People die trying to make these. The animated lightning bolt is immune to lightning damage, obviously, but it also can't be grappled or knocked prone, among other immunities. But the reason I mentioned those 2 is because if the bolt is stunned, restrained, petrified, or paralyzed, it dies immediately. But making that happen is clearly a little bit of a challenge. It can also pass through objects and creatures without slowing down, and it zaps people with lightning damage when it passes through them. And finally, we have the Speed Elemental, and I'm going to read some of the flavor for this one. The dust devil behind a galloping horse, the flurry of water droplets coming off the prow of a ship, the movement of inertia that comes at the very apex of a turn. These things draw upon the tangible element of speed. That same element can be harnessed into a being of its own, and on rare occasions, these creatures can be found hurtling through the wilderness. As careless and destructive as a wayward hurricane, speed elementals move with the ruthless efficiency of a being created to do just that. Move. Stepping into one's path is foolish and unwise, but how can you know if you're fast without outrunning a creature of pure speed? Speed elementals, in addition to just looking awesome, it's my favorite piece of art I've seen for the project so far, but speed elementals are CR8 creatures with a flying speed of 120 feet. They're invisible, and opportunity attacks against them have disadvantage. I like the feature critically fast as well. Whenever an elemental rolls a 20 on an attack, saving throw, or ability check, its speed permanently increases by 10 feet. It can crash into enemies, and if it moves 60 feet or more before hitting them, it knocks them prone. And it also has Speed Drain, which forces nearby creatures to make a dex save or have their speed reduced by 10 feet for the next hour. And yes, if you're curious, this effect can stack. That's potentially a very powerful ability, which is why it has a recharge of 5 to 6. Now the rest of the packet includes some other awesome stuff, like a playable race, some vehicle stats, and rules for racing. I'm not going to go into these in a lot of detail because that would make this video pretty long, but also, I have a larger subject I want to focus on, which is the reason why I highlighted the specific parts of the packet that I did. I want to focus on how this subclass, these monsters, and the magic items and spells we've covered today tackle an issue I've seen come up on many occasions across many different 5e campaigns and groups. Sometimes, during combat, players will just not even think about moving. They'll park themselves somewhere on the battlefield and get kind of locked in. Maybe that's because they're ranged attackers and they found someplace with a good vantage point on the battlefield. Maybe they're a melee attacker, but enemies keep rushing at them, so no matter how many bad guys they killed, there are always other opponents around them, and they don't want to risk the attack of opportunity, so they just don't move. For whatever the reason, I see it a lot, people get shy about moving. And part of it is that monsters often just fight heroes to the death, so heroes never actually need to move. Eventually they'll be able to kill all the monsters, and we'll talk about that some other day. But also, part of this is because monsters maybe don't act as tactically as they could and don't move around too often. And the monsters we just saw in this packet help to avoid that issue. And on the flip side, sometimes the issue is that the players just don't have the ability to move as far and as fast as they would like. If they use their speed to move, they won't catch whoever they're chasing, or won't be able to do anything when they get there, or they'll have to force their way past a bunch of enemies, or for any number of reasons, movement just isn't worth it. Movement just doesn't matter during some of these fights. That's not to say that positioning doesn't matter. It does. It matters in a bunch of encounters, especially with bad guys who have pack tactics or if you're using the optional flanking rules. But even if positioning is a big deal, players might find a place to fight and just kind of get locked in, maybe even unconsciously. And they often just aren't incentivized to move much during combat. But even just using what we've seen today with the Oath of Speed subclass and the magic items and spells, the players have a lot more opportunities to move during their turns, and even between their turns. But of course, there's no reason to use those powers if the combat encounters don't generate a demand for them, which is why it matters so much that movement is so important to these monsters. The Speed Elemental drains speed away from the heroes, and both the Speed Elemental and the Speed Demon have a chance of getting higher speed the longer the fight goes on. Meanwhile, both the Speed Demon and the animated Lightning Bolt force the players to think about creative ways to halt their enemies, since if you can stop them from moving for even a turn, the Speed Demon gets a lot more manageable, and the animated Lightning Bolt just ceases to exist altogether. I don't know this for certain, I wasn't in the room when they were developing this book, so I don't know if the designers were trying to tackle this exact issue in 5e games. But this is an issue I've run into, and it's something I've seen other groups struggle with, and so the features in this book would be fantastic to help me solve that problem. And so I'm definitely going to pick up this book and use it to enhance my games and to help my players think more tactically. Now, as I said, I focused on the specific elements of this packet that lined up with how this book solves this specific problem, but there's a lot of other awesome stuff they sent to me. The rest of the preview packet includes stats for a few vehicles like the Fire Spitter and the Troop Advancing Machine. We also get a glimpse at the rules for street races and air races, and these rules are a ton of fun. They include both the system for running a race, as well as the in-world rules, like who is allowed to race, and what kind of vehicle you're allowed to use, and the different kinds of races, and the power dynamics between them. It's honestly pretty cool. And given everything we've discussed so far, for all of these monsters and spells and subclasses would be a terrific additions to a world where street racing or aerial dogfights are a part of life. I also got to see one of the playable races, the Traveler, which is themed around being someone from another culture, and basically encourages the players to think about the concepts of exploration and travel a bit more. And I really like the Traveler. I wanted to talk about it in this video, but it just didn't fit the theme of what I think makes this book indispensable for the problem I've seen in so many 5e games. That actually brings up another excellent point. I also like how the inclusion of the Traveler and the racing mechanics shows that this isn't just a book designed around fixing this one specific problem I discussed in the video. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff in this book that I haven't even begun to touch on. For example, the racing rules include the rules for building your own cart, and this is just one example of the vehicle creation mechanics that allow you to create and enchant racing vehicles. And there will be more than 30 vehicle stats in the book, but the vehicle creation mechanics don't tie you into creating just the specific vehicles presented. You have a lot more customization, so you can create something that truly fits your group's needs. I also wish I could have dug into those race rules in more detail. I haven't gotten a chance to play them, but they are actually really cool and very simple. Plus, they have a lot of great details about the roles of these races and racers in society, and how you can get access to the races, and how you can get scouted for the big race by doing illegal races, which are way more dangerous, and I really like them. These are really cool. So obviously, if you want to know more, check out the Kickstarter campaign, and if this book sounds like it's your speed, then back Guillman's Guide to Speed on Kickstarter. The link is in the doobly-doo below. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to OnlyCrits for sponsoring this video and for sharing the early material from Guillman's Guide to Speed. If you want to see more content from me, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell. If you want to support me financially, please check out my Patreon. Join my Discord server to hang out with other awesome geeks and nerds like yourself, or I think like yourself, at least like me. Follow me on Twitch to watch my live streams where I film future videos, but also sometimes I just play Hades. And since social media is a whole mess right now, sign up for my newsletter to stay up to date with my latest announcements. We talked a bit about racing today, but if you want to hear me talk about a different definition of races in D&D, this is a terrible transition, but check out my video where I show you how you can create a character starting with their ancestry. Until next time, play fair and have fun.